Hey, welcome everybody. This is John Paul Dr. Speed Selling, and this is Raging Verbalist number 202. For those of you who are keeping track, hopefully you are. If you're brand new, welcome. If you're somebody who's been here before, glad that you're back. As you may or may not know, I talk about any topics that are interesting to me, and I rage about them. Some are touch a little bit on some politics and some other stuff, but not much. You know, we talk about other types of things. And can check us out on Facebook and YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, hit that up button, you know, give me a thumbs up, subscribe please. And if you want to be annoyed, get the notifications. And of course on Facebook, it is the Position to Win book group. Now with me as always, to ask the tough questions, to sit in your position is the ever lovely Sandra. Welcome, Sandra.
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing great. I mean, it's going to be an exciting topic. So what are we talking about today?
We are talking about the Elon Musk biography. So have you read the Elon Musk biography by Walter Isaacson?
The answer is I have read it, and I will show it to everybody. Usually we don't pitch other people's books. There is no affiliate link. I do not get any more additional money. See, this way I can say, Elon Musk was on my show. Look. Hi, Elon. How are things going? Really good, John. Glad that you had me on here. Yeah. So, you didn't know we were going to have a special guest, did you? Huh?
No, that was a surprise.
Yeah, can I shoot an arrow at a Cybertruck? Sure, John. Can we order pizza? Sure, yeah, let's order pizza. Shameless ripping off of Joe Rogan. You know, what the heck, right? So anyway.
Why not? Why not?
So why not? Have a little bit of fun. So yes, I've read the Walter Isaacson book. I went out and found it when it first came out, but I was on the road. Weighs too much for me to carry the physical copy of the book. I ended up buying it at Costco. You can probably still find it at Costco, probably Sam's Club, other places for cheap. And get it. It is a big one. It's 670 pages, and I always include the index and the credits and all that other stuff. So it's 670 pages roughly. So yes, I did read it, and that's what we're going to talk about today is the Elon Musk biography.
All right. And what other books by Walter Isaacson have you read?
So I've only read two of them. I mean, he puts out thick books. He puts out big books. He puts out books that bug crusher books. I mean, these are bug crushers. That baby will crack any exoskeleton out there, so you don't have to worry about it. And also, Sandra pointed out, it could be a good doorstop. It's heavy enough for that. It's almost enough that I probably would hold a small dinghy in stillness or something, but flat bottom boat, you bet. Go a little bass fishing, you know. There's always something else you can use with this thing. The other two books I've read by Walter Isaacson is Da Vinci and Steve Jobs. I know he's got more of them, but I wasn't pushed enough to do that. But Da Vinci I devoured, and Steve Jobs is one of those that I bought it on the Kindle special, so it would be delivered. And I did, I just went through that because, of course, always interested in learning about Steve. So those are the two books I've read, other than now Elon Musk and or Elon. So anyway, that's my Isaacson thing. Anybody who writes books, by the way, I always kind of look for where their bias is coming from. So I want to know their bio and who they are and everything. Isaacson, I think, does a pretty good job. But we'll make some comments a little bit down the road. So,
all right. So I know that you label some books Stalin biographies. So what do you mean by that?
Well, it's interesting, and I call them Stalin biographies because as I was getting serious about business, I wanted to read about captains of industry, as it was called at one point in time. I don't know why they couldn't get promoted beyond captain, but anyway, they were captains of industry, and I'd read these books and I would go, is this true? Is this real? Does this match up to what they actually did? Is this giving me the real information? And the reason for picking Joseph Stalin, ex-premier, dead premier of the Soviet Union, did all kinds of atrocities, you name it, he did it. Just go read Solzhenitsyn and you'll go, yikes, man, this guy was a bad guy. Or watch the movie The Death of Stalin, which is a more satirical black comedy, funny. I would recommend that. So the reason why I started calling things Stalin biographies is that I found out in my reading that Stalin had 3 official biographers, and the first 2 didn't make it. So one guy disappeared and another guy went to the camp. So no doubt somebody was writing an official, official biography, right? Oh, and they, they put down some things like, oh, hey, and then you put in the concentration camps and, and you killed a bunch of people. And somebody said, hey, we don't like that. Let's not have that in there. So anything that isn't giving me the real back of how something is done becomes a Stalin biography. I ran into a guy, Mark Victor Hansen, Chicken Soup guy, and he was in the green room. I was in the green room. He was the headline speaker. I was the peon speaker, and he had a Bill Gates book, and he had Post-it notes and highlighting, and he had a notebook, and he goes, yeah, this is amazing. I'd highly recommend it. And I said, well, the problem with that book, and I had skimmed the book. I read very quickly. Skimmed the book in a bookstore and passed on it, was Bill's 12 Secrets of How I Built Microsoft. That wasn't the title, but anyway, it's what it was all about. And I said, well, the problem is that it's a Stalin biography, and it's a Stalin biography is that maybe Bill had aspirationally wanted to do those things, but I knew too much about the story about what Bill did to build Microsoft. And I went, okay, I don't think any of that is really in there. And he goes, well, but there's really good stuff. Well, when somebody puts in what they want you to listen to and not really what they did, then I always go, I just say bullshit, and I call it a Stalin biography. And the reason for it is that it will send you down the wrong path. If you really believe this is how somebody did something and it isn't, that's no better than the Donner Party picking the scout that put them over the Sierras and they froze to death, a bunch of them, and then there was cannibalism. So I don't want to go there. So that's why I call things Stalin biographies. It is a harsh criticism, and I understand it, because when you're writing a book, hey, by the way, when you're writing a book, I understand lots of times you don't want to put in the stuff where you go, oh, I don't like that part of my story. Can I clean that up and make it prettier? So that's why I call certain books Stalin biographies.
So is the Elon Musk book a Stalin biography?
So over the years, I have gotten to the point where I don't grade them on a 0 to 1, a true or false, a yes or no. I kind of put a gradation. And I would say out of this book that there is some Stalin biography stuff in here. Isaacson gets very involved in his, in Elon's drama and the girlfriends and the paramours and the this and the that and his crazy father and all on and on. So he gets involved in that, and that's where I think we kind of go off into kind of Stalin-esque things. He leaves out a whole bunch of business stuff, which I think are really important. What makes up a Stalin biography in my mind is the omissions that are left out, the things that are left out. If I find a book where the person who was the subject of the book was probably trying to sue him to stop publication, and sometimes it was because it was famous people who didn't want to disclose who they betted or who they what drugs they took or whatever it was, but oftentimes it's business things that get left out. So I would say we're about 50-60% is kind of a Stalin-esque kind of stuff. 40% is worthwhile though. So, but you got to know that there's a lot of behind the scenes stories that he never talks about, he never captures, he never does. And when he does touch it a little bit, and he asks Elon, because he lived with this guy or traveled with this guy for years to get this information. Of course, Elon by this point in time has become a master at answering these questions, and he answers them pretty well. I mean, I have to give him credit for that. However, all I can say is that you got to be careful. So it's partially, I don't give it a full, Joe Stalin, multiple, red stars and hammer and sickles, but it's, it's got some Stalin-esque stuff in there. Now, I believe that what you really need to do is that if you're going to be successful in business, is that you should always try to find as much of the unvarnished truth about how things really work. And you should live up to saying, okay, I got to really know what's going on, because I'm putting my own money, put my friends and family money, I'm putting my investor money, I'm putting whatever on the line. And so I have a book for you. And that book is How Most Businesses Fail in the First 5 Minutes. And I'm not joking. They fail in the first 5 minutes because they do not do one key thing, which we disclose in this book, but there's other things that happen in this book. When you read through this, I hope you will, and you can get this physically at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and wherever books are sold. You can buy the physical copy. As you can tell, this is my copy because it has little Post-it notes and all of that stuff. Or you can get it electronically on Kindle, Nook, and then also Apple Books. You can also get it from positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com. Check it out there. You can ask me to write in an inscription. I will, as long as it's not too crazy out there. Also, you can check out Remote Work for a Better World, which is we wrote that book as the pandemic was going batshit crazy about how to go out and do this. I have been a remote worker for more often than not. People who just jumped into this thing and said, "Oh, I'm going to be a remote worker." If they had followed most of our advice, some of our advice, a little of our advice, most of the productivity problems and some of the issues that people ran into would not have happened. Well, there's always hope. So go check it out. And always remember that if nothing else, go out and get yourself a Raging Verbalist mug. Everything tastes just a little bit better in a Raging Verbalist mug. All right, Sandra, what do we have next?
All right, so what secret was revealed in the book?
So when I read a biography, especially about somebody as unique and outstanding as Elon Musk, and this is where I will say, when people say, "Oh, everybody's got a story in it," the real question is, they have a story that's worth telling. He does. I find it fascinating. The first Elon Musk book was really a puff piece, really, Stalin biography-esque, cotton candy, and just there's no, it was not just not substance. What I discovered about him, which I knew but I didn't know, but the book, this is where Isaacson pays off, right? I'll look for the payoff. I'm not just looking to crap on the book. I'm looking for the payoff. And the payoff is that this guy is, first off, he's insatiable. The fact that he would sleep on the factory floor, a la Henry Ford a century earlier or thereabouts, and would sleep on the factory floor. So that way, a couple of things. Number one is he demonstrated leadership. He showed that he was willing to do that. Number two is that when problems arose, it didn't get filtered up through layers and layers and layers of kiss-ass management people. And nobody wants to be a kiss-ass manager, except, who wants to tell the boss that, hey, this stuff is, it's just getting screwed up here. So he got to the point where he could do that. So he's insatiable about that. And whether it's SpaceX or it's Tesla or now X, he appears to be a man who can do serial focus, which is really important. The biggest thing that came out of it is that he has a risk tolerance that is off the frickin' chart. And risk tolerance means how much risk are you willing to take? How much are you willing to put on the line at any given point in time without just sitting there going, what's the downside? Well, the downside is catastrophe. The downside is it's going to fall apart. Now, the little segments I'm telling you about the book, I don't think it's spoiler alert. I'm not telling you who it's going to be this or that. What I am going to say is that when he figured out that he needed to, send this rocket into space, rocket number 1 blows up, rocket number 2 blows up, hey, we fixed a bunch of stuff, hey, 3 times a charm. He only had enough money for 3 times, sends it up, and, the fix that they came up with, the fix screwed up something else, and then that blew up. So he had to race around and raise money because he was always on the edge. And he talked about how he was close to bankruptcy on SpaceX and Tesla and other things. To me, that is a risk tolerance level that I think is unmatched by anybody else. I mean, you don't see that with any of these other people because most of them are going to take the easy road or take the simple road or take the, I'm not going to take that kind of big chance. And he keeps doing it over and over and over again, which is why I find it interesting. Also, I have now started to rent Tesla cars on a regular basis. I'm trying to check them out. Is the quality where I want it to be? No, but it's the software and the experience of driving it shows the obsession, the insatiable drive by this guy. So that came out loud and clear, and that's worth reading about and then asking yourself how it fits with you.
So what exactly do you mean by risk tolerance?
One of the things I used to do when I would speak in front of a group, a large audience, and a large audience could be as small as 25, could be as many as several hundred, is that I would ask them a simple risk question. What is your risk tolerance? What are you willing to risk at any point in time? And here's the setup to that. You can do it at home, you know. And what you can do is you take out a coin, make sure it's a fair coin. Fair coin means if you flip it 100 times, 50 times it'll come up heads, 50 times it'll come up tails. So therefore, there is not a bias in the coin. So it's a random event that's going to take place. And the question I would ask the audience is, okay, here's the setup. Everybody's got $1,000. You have $1,000 to your name. There is no future. There is no past. There's just now. If I take this fair coin and I bet my $1,000 against your $1,000 and we flip the coin, which means half of the time you'll win, half the time I'll win in a random event, will you take the bet? Now, if you have a whole team of people, I was training an entire sales team, most of the company, and a couple of people said, yeah, they would take the bet. Okay, I'm going to make the odds a little bit better. I'm going to make it 2 to 1. So my $1,000 or your $1,000 against my $2,000. Will you take the bet? And more hands went up. And then it kept going higher and higher and higher. Well, what that is that means that as the odds increased, I mean, the payoff increased, the odds stayed the same, the payoff increased, that some people would then see it and say, okay, I'm willing to take that risk, knowing that I could lose 1,000, I'm out 1,000, I don't know what I'm going to do without it, but I've got to take the chance because the percentages, the payoff is so high, and I got a shot at it. And anyway, most of the time when I get to like 5 to 1 or 6 to 1 or whatever, is that I'll get everybody's hand to eventually go up. That's the point of the exercise, because it's to see what is your risk tolerance? What are you willing to bet on a payoff that could be great? And this one company, I got to 16 to 1, and the guy who wouldn't say yes. Now, there is no negative if you'll never say yes. Just understand and accept who you are, which is you will not take a risk. You will not take a chance. So that means, I guess, you got to go buy a bigger mattress and shove all the money in it, and start canning peaches and filling sandbags and get a helmet and a shotgun reloader or something. So this guy gets up to 16 to 1. Now, I'm not there to stand in judgment. That isn't what I'm doing, but I am there to evaluate how teams work. He turned out to be the person who had to sign off on the proposals that were being sent to customers. And therefore, he was the one who was saying, yep, I'll green light it. We can send it off to customers. He was so risk adverse. There's risk tolerance, there's risk aversion. He was so risk averse that even if it was 16 times I was risking 16,000 his 1,000, he said no. So I told the CEO, I said, you got to get this guy out of that slot, because that guy is going to turn down almost every piece of business. He goes, well, we've had a hard time because we have a high winning percentage, but we're just not getting up to bat that well. Or we put together so many caveats in our proposals that we're not winning those. So that's what risk tolerance is about. Risk tolerance is what you will accept. Well, Elon Musk is a risk tolerant guy because he's willing to bet millions, and then we found out billions because he went out and bought X and spent $44 billion or whatever crazy number it is. Yikes, that's crazy risk tolerance.
And what's your favorite story?
So my favorite story from the book, and again, I'm spoiler alert, so if you want to sit there and cover your ears or something, my favorite story is where he takes over X, or Twitter, now X, and he goes out there and he finds out that there's these server farms, and he wants to save some money, and he finds out that they're spending $100 million a year to this third party to house all of these Twitter servers. Finds out that they're in Sacramento, gets a team of people together. It's a holiday, and rolls out there and essentially wants to disassemble all the servers because he owns them. By the way, that's a very common thing where you own the server, but it's sitting in somebody else's rack attached to big giant fiber attached to this big honking thing called the internet. And he gets there, and the company that has it is that, well, first off, they're freaked out. Everybody else told him it was going to take weeks to do it, and he goes out and rents every truck that he can find. And they're like, well, maybe we need to keep track of this. So somebody swings by the Apple store and buys $2,000 worth of Apple tags that they can stick on there and, fire them up and line them up and all of that stuff. And he moves them like in a blink of an eye. Now, later on, in retrospect, he goes, well, that was probably a little impetuous or something like that. I love that story because that story is emblematic of somebody who went out and made something happen instead of saying, let's plan to plan to plan to plan to plan. That happens a lot. And then you're months or years or never down the road getting this stuff done. So that was my favorite story, was the moving of the servers and how crazy that was and what that is. And it just reflected on my own adventures, though I didn't have to go out and buy $2,000 worth of air tags.
And so would you recommend the book, and how should it be consumed?
So as I've gone through the book, and I have certain sections that I like, and then see, hi Elon, glad you're back on the show. Is that I mean, I tell you, you don't even know what you're going to get on a Andrew's going, this isn't how the prep call went. Anyway, so I would recommend the book. I think it's important. I think it's important because he is a significant force in the first in the U.S., but also in the world. If he actually does make it to Mars, which, nobody else was talking about going to Mars before he was. I mean, they were, but they weren't. And, he's really putting heat on a lot of industries and moving stuff forward. So, yes, I would absolutely recommend the book. Understand that Walter Isaacson has a bias. I accept that and where that comes from. I'm disappointed that they left some of the business stuff out, which I think is important. Maybe somebody will write that and distill that, because there's a lot we can learn from that. Maybe people aren't happy about if they heard that part of it. Now, how should you consume it? So you can buy this book like I did at the Costco, and that way you've got a bug crusher close by, or as Sandra has it right there behind her, so you can go pick this up, and then any day that you want to, because I know that this may sound a little weird. Any day you can just pick it up and say, well, what would Elon do? And then Elon can talk to you from the book. If you do that too many times, you may be having a psychotic episode. That might be a little weird. But anyway, you can buy it and read it in hardbound. You can read it in any digital format, because I know it's available in Kindle and Nook and Apple iBooks. Or you can do what I did, which is I went and got the Audible version, and that way I could crank up the speed and listen to it. As I jokingly say to Gabe Batista, who's my co-conspirator, co-author, and business partner, once you crank up the speed high enough, it goes from English. Now he can listen to it at like 2.4 or 2.6 times the speed. I'm stuck at somewhere between 1.2 and 1.4 times the speed. So you can plow through it. You can listen to it doing other things. It's worth doing. My suggestion is that if you're really busy, and unless you're going to be on a very high fiber diet where you're going to put this in the restroom and you're going to keep knocking this thing out, unless you're going to buy a lot of brand muffins, my suggestion is that you probably buy it as an audio. That would be my statement, and condition your mind to listen to it faster. Jokingly, I've said to Gabe is that if you really crank the speed up from 1 eventually to 3.2, it actually turns out to be Spanish, because as I listen to Gabe speaking to his business associates who are heavy duty Spanish is their first language, I mean, it just sounds like it's like somebody's really sped this thing up a little bit too fast. So that's my recommendation. Go out and buy it, check it out. I think you'll learn something from it. Take notes. Make sure that you do some of those things. Make sure you don't just have it wash over you and you're done. You're not trying to pass a college exam. What you're trying to do is you're trying to learn how to be better in life. And with that, I want to thank this John Paul Show. I want to thank you for coming on and listening and spending some time with myself and the ever lovely Sandra. And this has been the Raging Verbalist number 202. Go on, have a great one, and we'll see you next Friday for another exciting episode of the Raging Verbalist.